I would agree with you that the reference to Pakistan as a phenomenal partner boosts Pakistan's global image, and it helps really Pakistan to come in from the cold in many ways. I certainly think it grates on our ears, and it would point to, at least in our point of view, some degree of American amnesia on the whole role that Pakistan has played when it comes to global terrorism. That's an unfortunate reality that the United States seems to have overlooked that track record of Pakistan. The unfortunate reality, if I can come back to that, is Pakistan is going to cleverly leverage this newfound appreciation that the Americans have expressed vis-a-vis Pakistan to gain diplomatic advantage for itself.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Days after Shashi Tharoor and a delegation of MPs visited Washington seeking to convince the American government and American media that Pakistan is the epicenter of terror and the victims and perpetrators of terror cannot be treated at par, the head of the United States Central Command, General Michael Kurilla, has called Pakistan a phenomenal partner in counter-terrorism. Also, Pakistan's Field Marshal Munir has been invited to attend the United States Army Day celebrations on Saturday, whilst Pakistan has been made the chair or co-chair of important United Nations Security Council committees on counter-terrorism. So what message does all of that send New Delhi? And does it suggest our efforts to convince Washington have not succeeded, but in fact fallen on deaf ears? That's the issue I shall raise today with the former Foreign Secretary and former Ambassador to America, as well as former Ambassador to China, Nirupama Rao. Mrs. Rao, how do you view the statement made by General Michael Kurilla, the head of the United States Army Central Command, to the House of Representatives Armed Services Committee, that Pakistan is a phenomenal partner in the counter-terrorism world? How do you view that?
Well, I believe that the reference to Pakistan as a phenomenal partner, although it could have been said rhetorically, I can see that aspect of it. But I believe it has been said in the context of counterterrorism cooperation that the U.S. and Pakistan have in regard to Afghanistan and to the tribal areas. But I would agree with you that the reference to Pakistan as a phenomenal partner boosts Pakistan's global image, and it helps really Pakistan to come in from the cold in many ways. So that said, I also would say that Pakistan is seen in very transactional terms by the United States today as a security partner. The invitation to General Munir, or Field Marshal as he styles himself these days, to the quincentennial parade in Washington certainly has a very high visibility. So we have to be clear-eyed about it. Pakistan, in my view, is seen more as a tactical partner rather than a strategic ally of the US. It has its uses in counterterrorism, as I know. And General Munir, or Field Marshal Munir, he is no hero for us by any definition, but the US sees him as a professional and useful asset because he has both an intelligence and military background.
I'll come to Field Marshal Munir and the invitation that he's got to be a guest at the 250th United States Army Day celebrations on Saturday, which is tomorrow, in a moment's time. Let me first focus on General Kurilla. Clearly, General Kurilla has forgotten, or at least he's deliberately overlooked, the fact that terrorists like Osama bin Laden, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi Youssef, Mir Ajmal Khansi, who were responsible for major acts of terrorism against the United States, were either Pakistani or sought shelter and protection in Pakistan. Consequently, he doesn't view Pakistan as the epicenter of terror. He views Pakistan as a phenomenal partner fighting terror. that clearly is something that's going to grate on Indian ears.
I certainly think it grates on our ears. And it would point to, at least in our point of view, some degree of American amnesia on the whole role that Pakistan has played when it comes to global terrorism. That's an unfortunate reality that the United States seems to have overlooked that track record of Pakistan. But as I said before, what the US sees in Pakistan today is there being an asset when it comes to counter-terrorism in regard to the jihadi ecosystem in Afghanistan and the tribal areas, and perhaps also on collaboration with Iran because Pakistan borders Iran. And the unfortunate reality, if I can come back to that, is Pakistan is going to cleverly leverage this newfound appreciation that the Americans have expressed vis-a-vis Pakistan to gain diplomatic advantage for itself.
But it's not just limited to comments made by General Kurilla. He also went out of his way to praise Field Marshal Munir's role in handing over ISIS-Khorasan terrorists to America. He named him in particular. He said that he was the first person General Munir, as he then was at the time, rang, and General Munir asked for this to be conveyed to the Defense Secretary and to President Trump as well, all of which General Kurilla did. And now we discover, quite separately, that Field Marshal Munir has been invited to be a guest at the 250th US Day Army celebrations on Saturday. That's tomorrow. Doesn't it seem that both General Kurilla and the US Army as an institution think very highly of Field Marshal Munir? We in India do not think of him in the same way at all.
Well, I'm not going to psychoanalyze General Kurilla's mind when it comes to Field Marshal Munir. But the fact is, yes, as you pointed out, Munir has been invited to the 250th anniversary parade of the United States Army. His presence there is going to have very high visibility. And what it points to is that the Central US Army Command and the Pakistanis have a very close and continuing relationship, a tactical partnership perhaps, and Pakistan is going to use it to its advantage. So as I said, Pakistan is coming from the cold.
Absolutely. Just actually when we wanted to freeze them, they're stepping back into the warmth of an American embrace.
Well, that's the unfortunate reality, but we'll have to deal with it. We don't have to collapse in a heap.
But the third thing that's happened is probably equally disconcerting for us in India. We view Pakistan as the epicenter of terror, yet Pakistan has been appointed as the chair or the co-chair or the vice chair of 3 counter-terrorism committees at the UN Security Council. That surely could not have happened without the approval of the United States and the other P5 countries. So once again, we are knocking on the door of the United States to say Pakistan is the epicenter of terror, freeze them out. And here's America approving Pakistan as the chair, co-chair, or vice chair of important United Nations Security Council committees on terrorism.
Well, let me point out 2 things as far as this is concerned, as far as Pakistan being on the 2 committees you mentioned is concerned. Now, it's normal and procedural for a UN Security Council non-permanent member, I emphasize non-permanent member, to take on a leadership role, a chair or vice chair of various committees during their tenure at some point of time. So let's not over-dramatize this. The second point I wanted to say is that one can question the committees that they've been handed. You made that. That's a very valid point. And I have my impression or my hunch is that the Pakistanis definitely expressed interest in the counter-terrorism committee and the Taliban sanctions committee for obvious reasons. And they got those, right? And
Can I
finish? Can I finish?
Of course.
They had to get something, obviously. And as per convention, the UN Security Council P5 members do not get to chair any sanctions committees to avoid so-called conflicts of interest. And it's the non-permanent members that normally get these roles. Thirdly, India had also chaired these very committees when we were on the Security Council, the CTC and the Taliban Sanctions Committee. Now, in a strange, inevitable way, things have come to pass where the Pakistanis are occupying similar roles.
But there's nothing inevitable about it. At the very moment when we were knocking on doors in Washington, Shashi Tharoor was meeting the Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau. He met the American Vice President, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was in India when Pahalgam happened. Despite all of that, the Americans had no problem in agreeing to Pakistan chairing, co-chairing, or vice-chairing 3 important committees on terror. Surely, at this point of time, if India's concerns had been taken on board, the Americans, or maybe any of the other P5 members, would have expressed a certain measure of dissent. Give Pakistan other committees. There's no shortage of committees that they can be given to chair. Why give them terror committees when we're knocking on their door about their terror lack of credentials?
We can argue this, I mean, till doomsday comes. There could have been various outcomes that much more suitable to our interests. But the fact is, this has happened, and we'll have to deal with these realities. And these are not permanent fixtures, one must also say that. It's not the end of the world.
Let me put it like this. All of this has happened when we had a delegation in America to highlight Pakistan's role in cross-border terrorism and to remind America that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. If this is the response we get, not just Pakistan chairing or co-chairing these committees at the UN-SC level, but the invitation to Field Marshal Munir, the complimentary comments made by General Kurilla about Pakistan being a phenomenal partner in counter-terrorism, if that is the response, and there are 3-4 aspects of that response, then how should we in India view this?
Well, I think we should understand that there are no zero-sum diplomatic approaches. And the United States is not going to make a binary choice between India and Pakistan, despite what we may think. That's a short answer to your question.
That's not the answer we were looking for.
Well, that's the answer I'm giving you. The United States is not going to make those binary choices, especially in a Trump 2.0 administration. It's a very transactional White House out there, and we have to come to grips with that reality.
Our External Affairs Minister has gone public on record many times to say that the world cannot treat the victims of terror, which is India, with the perpetrators of terror on par, the perpetrators of terror being Pakistan. Doesn't it seem that that's exactly what Trump and Kurilla have done? Doesn't it seem that Jaishankar's message simply has not been accepted by them? The victims and the perpetrators are being treated on par. We definitely did not want that to happen.
Well, I'm not dealing in diplomatic obiter dicta here. I only wanted to say, yes, the optics certainly don't look good, but they need not shatter our dreams. We are the strategic superior to Pakistan, and there's no need to outrage about it. Perhaps what we need to do in the months ahead is to outmaneuver Pakistan on these issues.
Let me quote what the Economics Times has published today on their op-ed page. It's an article by 2 highly reputed scholars, Harsh Pant and Vivek Mishra. They write, and I'm quoting them, that the divergence between New Delhi and Washington is now most pronounced on the issue of Pakistan and more broadly on terrorism. That is not an outcome that we wanted. Whether it's a temporary outcome or a prolonged one is a matter of detail. It's not the outcome we wanted this morning.
Well, I did read the piece this morning, and thank you for raising this. I would agree with you that the divergence between India and the United States today, while it's not a rupture, as I pointed out very clearly, is indeed most pronounced on issues relating to Pakistan and more broadly, perhaps on global counter-terrorism narratives. And here's how that plays out. You know, we regard Pakistan as a long-standing state sponsor of cross-border terrorism. And the U.S., even under administrations that are friendly to India, continues to treat Pakistan as a geopolitical asset, especially due to Afghanistan, whatever stability concerns they have, Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, and of course, the larger China containment calculus. So it's a kind of dual-track policy, arms for India, aid or diplomatic cushioning for Pakistan, and it certainly frustrates our policymakers. I concede that point. And on terrorism, certainly, obviously, there are differences of approach. We would like terrorism to be called out irrespective of political alignments, but the United States tends to prioritize terror threats linked to their homeland security, linked to global jihadist groups like ISIS-K or Al-Qaeda, and not necessarily region-specific insurgencies like those that affect India. So, there is a tactical ambiguity that Washington seems to be following. We would have preferred a much more principled, across-the-board condemnation, but it's a divergence we have to manage. I don't believe it's going to destabilize the relationship because the United States and India have significant convergence on so many issues, especially Indo-Pacific security, technology, our very substantial
on the issue of
cooperation,
terror.
and let me complete China containment.
On that question of terror, you admitted that it's a divergence. You admitted that this frustrates us. Is it a setback on the issue of terror and on the issue of Pakistan?
No, I regard it in the context of our relationship with the United States. It's a strategic asset for us. It's a core relationship. It's a very crucial partnership. And I would like to use the metaphor here of the US-India relationship being like some kind of a strategic cruise ship. It's not a lifeboat. It's not a tactical canoe. The US-India partnership is a valuable and versatile strategic asset for us. And that's the reason we need to keep our sights very firmly fixed on the advancement of that partnership. It's a big partnership, it's resilient, and let's look at it as a long-haul relationship.
It's not just that India's message that Pakistan is the epicenter of terror has been sidestepped or ignored. We've discussed that in considerable detail. There also seems to be a conscious attempt to hyphenate India and Pakistan on the question of terror. Let me quote General Kurilla once again. He told the House Armed Services Committee, and I'm quoting him now, "We need to have a relationship with Pakistan and with India. I do not believe it's a binary switch that we can't have one with Pakistan if we have a relationship with India. We should look at the merits of the relationship for the positives that it has." That's not a message we were sending in Washington when our delegation went there. That's not a message that Jaishankar is giving the world when he says the victims of terror and the perpetrators of terror cannot be treated at par. Yet that's precisely what America's doing when they hyphenate on the issue of terror India and Pakistan.
Well, India and Pakistan have always tended to be hyphenated. After all, we were one country. Geography hyphenates us in many ways. So that dehyphenation, as we've moved ahead, as we've grown spectacularly, has in our minds and the minds of many has been seen as somewhat weakened. But in terms of tensions in the subcontinent and whenever there is conflict of the nature that we saw in recent weeks, that hyphenation comes back. And I think that shadow will continue to haunt us.
So are you saying it's natural and understandable?
Well, it is a factor that remains on the scene when it comes to tensions between India and Pakistan. We are going to be hyphenated, and that's a very stark reality that we will have to confront.
Well, hang on a moment. That's not a reality Jaishankar wants to confront. Your words were, we are going to be hyphenated when it comes to issues like this, and we have to face that stark reality. Jaishankar certainly doesn't want to face it.
See, I am not here to speak for our foreign minister. I'm here to speak as an independent citizen who takes an interest in these issues and has had a background of experience in diplomacy and geopolitics. I come to this conversation from that angle.
But it's not just Kurilla, General Kurilla, who's hyphenating India and Pakistan on the issue of terror. The honest truth is that rehyphenation between India and Pakistan was started by President Trump. Perhaps when he first claimed that he was mediating between the two countries, and he then called them both equally great countries with both having equally great leaders. And he not only said that once, he said it 12 or 13 times, including to President Putin. So it's quite obvious that even Trump sees India and Pakistan in the same light and through the same lens. And that's what we don't want. We don't want to be viewed in the same light and the same lens as Pakistan. Yet America's doing that.
I certainly agree. We don't want to be viewed in the same light as Pakistan. Pakistan in the American eyes. And of course, I think the Americans understand that at the heart of it, we are leagues ahead of Pakistan. We're not in the same league at all. But as I said, and I've said it before, when two nuclear armed countries such as India and Pakistan have tensions between them, and there is conflict brewing between the two countries, and somehow the situation erupts, then it no longer it is no longer a bilateral issue. It becomes the world's problem. And I've said it before, and I'm saying it again.
But that's a message that ought to be heard loud and clear in South Bloc and by Jaishankar in particular, because it contradicts the stand that he's taking. And you're doing it, I know, not because you're appearing to contradict him, but you're a predecessor, former foreign secretary, with as much experience of America as he has. You've both been ambassadors in America, and you're saying to him that when it comes to potential conflict or actual conflict between two nuclear-powered countries, that is how the world will see it. That's not how Jaishankar wants the world to see it, though.
Well, I'm putting my perspective across.
All right, let's hope he's listening.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Now, you've told me that to ensure India's message of terrorism is better heard and listened to, we need to appoint what you called a special envoy for terror. As you said, sending out periodic delegations is not sufficient. It does no harm, but it may not actually further our cause effectively. Why would a special envoy be a better idea?
Well, I think it will be an idea whose time has come, because we would essentially want to create a high-level diplomatic position that elevates and projects our global counter-terrorism agenda through multilateral engagement. And we focus simultaneously on global South solidarity, which is why separately a few days ago I had suggested a T20, 20 against terrorism, which India could convene. India could steward. I'm not saying that India should act as big boss here, but that we could steward and shepherd a grouping like this of countries from the global South who have been affected by terrorism. And coming back to the special envoy, I believe a high-level diplomatic position, a person who has the confidence and the ear of our Prime Minister would be very effective. Much more, I believe, be able to make much more of an impact on these issues than just sending periodic delegations. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I believe that having a high-level envoy, that's an idea whose time has come.
Do you think Shashi Tharoor, given his capacity to be charming, to be effective and convincing, and to actually know how the American and the Western system works, because he's been a diplomat at the UN for 40 years, do you think he'd be a good special envoy?
Well, I think he's a very effective face for India, a very good spokesman for our interests. Ultimately, of course, the choice would rest with the government.
Let's come to the idea you proposed in the Indian Express on the 10th. You suggested that India should steward, as you put it a moment ago, or help convene and put together what you called the T20 against terrorism. And you described it, and I'm quoting you, as a dedicated alliance of 20 countries led by India, comprising nations from the global South who face terror threats. Why are you leaving out countries like France and Germany, which periodically face terrible terror threats? They surely should have a voice and a role to play in this T20. Why are you limiting it just to the global South?
Well, I just put across this idea. It's certainly not set in stone as far as membership is concerned. And we have wonderful collaboration with countries like France and Germany. This is not an exclusionary bloc that I am defining or suggesting. We could certainly look at interesting ideas like the one you just proposed.
So you're open to the idea of including France and Germany in your T20?
I'm certainly open to the ideas of countries that really have had a legitimate record of fighting terror, who have counter-terrorism capabilities, and whose advice and whose capacity would benefit us too.
Now, you haven't in that article for the Indian Express identified the 20 countries that should comprise the T20, but you've named a few. You've named countries like Indonesia, Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, Mali, Fiji, and the Philippines. Why would their collective voice make a difference?
It's an informal bloc that I suggested, or an informal group that I suggested, because there is a very crucial gap today in the institutional response to terror. And I am putting across an idea for a group whose mandate would be very distinct, would be action-oriented, and centered around the needs and realities of us as countries of the Global South. You know, potential members, I'll read out, I have a list of the 20 that you had mentioned, you expressed some interest in knowing who I had thought of including. And I had thought of Indonesia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, Mali, in the Sahel, Brazil, Philippines, Mexico, Israel, South Africa, Fiji, Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, Ethiopia, Morocco, Thailand, Jordan, and Vietnam. As I said, it's not an exclusionary bloc.
But with Israel as a member, doesn't the bloc become a non-starter? Many would not be willing to be with Israel as a member country on the issue of terror.
No, I'm saying these are ideas. These are ideas that I'm putting across. As I said, this is not a mandate for me. I'm not a government-appointed functionary that has been mandated to put across this idea, but it's just a thought that crossed my mind, and I decided to put it down in that newspaper article. It's really, I wanted to ferment a debate on the issue, and I'm glad you're raising these questions, because the idea will take much firmer form as such debates continue.
Mrs. Rao, thank you very much for the time you've given me, and thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.